I've been backpacking for almost 8 years, long enough to know that the wilderness follows simple rules. Stay on the trail, filter your water, respect the weather, and never underestimate how quickly a mountain can humble you. That's why, when I planned a 3-day solo trip through Sawtooth National Forest, I wasn't looking for adventure. I was looking for silence. I arrived at the Iron Creek trailhead just after 9. The parking lot was almost empty. A couple of trucks, one dusty SUV. Nothing unusual. I checked my pack one last time. Tent, water filter, bear spray, satellite GPS, paper map, everything exactly where it should be. 3 days in the mountains, no phone calls, no traffic, just me. Before leaving, I stopped at the information board to check for trail closures. Most of the notices were exactly what you'd expect. Fire danger, bear activity, bridge repairs. Then I noticed an older volunteer ranger walking toward me. He looked to be in his 70s, sun-faded hat, coffee in one hand, a folded trail map in the other. He smiled and asked where I was headed. I showed him my route. He unfolded his own map beside mine. For almost a minute, he compared every trail, every lake, every campsite. Then he tapped one section with his finger. "I've got one piece of advice." I expected him to mention bears or mountain lions. Instead, he looked directly at me. He said, "If you find a campground that isn't marked on your map," he paused, "don't stay there." I laughed. I honestly thought he was messing with me. He didn't laugh back. He simply folded my map, handed it to me, and quietly wished me a safe trip. I started hiking 10 minutes later. The trail climbed steadily into the mountains. The farther I walked, the quieter everything became. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Then I realized I hadn't heard a single bird in over 15 minutes. And somehow, I hadn't noticed exactly when they stopped singing. By early afternoon, I'd covered a little over 8 miles. The trail was exactly what I'd expected. Steep climbs, rocky switchbacks, cold streams crossing the path every few hundred yards. Everything matched my map perfectly, which is why the next trail marker immediately caught my attention. It pointed toward a campsite I'd never seen before. Cedar Ridge Camp. I checked my paper map. Nothing. I checked my GPS. Nothing there either. I figured the sign had to be old. Trails get renamed all the time. Maybe the campground had been closed years ago. Still, something felt strange. The wood looked new. The paint hadn't faded. Even the bolts were clean. It looked like someone had installed it only a few weeks earlier. The sign claimed the campsite was less than half a mile away. I told myself I'd take a quick look, maybe eat lunch there, then continue toward my planned destination. I stepped off the main trail. Almost immediately, the forest changed. The ground became softer, the air felt colder, and the silence became impossible to ignore. About 10 minutes later, I reached a clearing. For a second, I honestly thought I'd taken the wrong trail, because sitting in front of me was one of the nicest backcountry campsites I'd ever seen. Stone fire ring, fresh-cut logs around it, a picnic table, even a metal campsite marker. Number 18. Everything looked maintained. Everything looked used. but there wasn't a single person anywhere. I called out. Hello? Nothing. I walked through the campsite. The fire pit was cold, no food, no backpacks, no trash, no footprints. It looked like someone had cleaned the entire place, then vanished. That's when I noticed the campground register. I opened the notebook expecting to see names, dates, maybe a few comments from other hikers. Instead, every single page was blank, except the last one. There was only one sentence, written in fresh black ink. You're early. I should have left. Every instinct told me to get back on the main trail before sunset, but after hiking nearly 9 miles, the idea of walking another 4 before dark didn't seem smart. The campsite was clean, the weather was calm, and despite the strange notebook, nothing dangerous had actually happened. So I convinced myself I'd stay, just for one night. I pitched my tent beside the fire ring, filtered water from a nearby creek, cooked a dehydrated meal. Everything felt normal, almost too normal. The silence from earlier had disappeared. Birds were singing again. Squirrels darted between the trees. For a while, I honestly believed I'd imagined the whole thing. Right before sunset, I decided to check the campground register one more time. I wanted to photograph that message, maybe report it to the ranger tomorrow. I opened the notebook. The page was still there, but the sentence was gone. The last page was completely blank. I checked the photo I'd taken earlier. The notebook was open. The page was visible, but there was nothing written on it. No message, no handwriting, no words. For a few seconds, I genuinely questioned my own memory. By 9 o'clock, darkness settled over the forest. The fire was burning low. I zipped the tent closed. That's when I heard it. A zipper. Not mine. Another one. Somewhere outside, slowly opening. Then, silence. I grabbed my flashlight, opened my tent, and stepped outside. The campsite was empty. The fire was still glowing. Nothing had moved. Then, I noticed something beside the fire ring. A second backpack. It hadn't been there 5 minutes earlier. It was clean, zipped shut, and it had my last name stitched across the front. I stared at the backpack for almost a full minute. It looked exactly like mine. Same brand, same color, same model. The only difference, my last name was stitched across the front pocket, not written with a marker, not taped on, professionally embroidered, like it had always belonged to me. I didn't touch it. Instead, I walked around the campsite looking for footprints. There should have been something. Fresh dirt, broken branches, anything. But the ground around the backpack was untouched. Even the layer of pine needles beneath it hadn't been disturbed. It was as if the backpack had simply appeared. Curiosity finally won. I slowly unzipped the main compartment. Inside, there was a sleeping bag, a water filter, a camping stove. Everything packed exactly the way I organized my own gear. Then I found the notebook. It was mine. My hands started shaking. I opened the notebook. Every page was filled with my handwriting. Every camping trip, every hiking route, every note, exactly as I remembered writing them, until I reached the final page. There was one entry, dated tomorrow. It read, "I finally understand why this campground isn't on the map." Below that, one more sentence. "If you're reading this, leave now. Don't wait until morning." I looked up from the notebook. The campfire had gone out. I never heard the fire die. I never heard the wood collapse. 1 second, the flames were burning. The next, the campsite was dark. Then, from somewhere beyond the trees, a flashlight switched on. One light, then another, then another. 3 white beams, moving slowly toward my campsite. I counted them again. 1, 2, 3 flashlights. They weren't waving around like hikers searching for a trail. They stayed perfectly level, moving at the same speed, keeping the exact same distance from each other, like whoever was carrying them had rehearsed this before. I switched off my own flashlight. The forest swallowed me whole. I slipped behind the picnic table, barely breathing. The lights kept getting closer. Then, they stopped. Maybe 30 yards away. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. Just 3 motionless beams shining through the trees, as if they already knew exactly where I was. Then every light turned off at exactly the same moment. The darkness came back instantly. I waited. 10 seconds, maybe 20. Nothing. I finally convinced myself whoever had been out there had left. Then I heard it. A zipper, right behind my tent. I spun around. The tent door was open. I knew I'd zipped it shut. Every pocket inside had been emptied. My food, my clothes, my first aid kit. Everything had been laid out in perfect rows, like someone had carefully inspected every single thing I owned. Then, I noticed one item that wasn't mine. An old Polaroid photograph. I picked up the photograph. It showed this exact campsite. The same fire ring, the same picnic table, the same trees. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Then I looked closer. There was a tent beside the fire. My tent. And someone was standing at the entrance, facing the camera. The image was too dark to make out a face, but I recognized the jacket. It was mine. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. I looked up. The 3 flashlight beams were back, closer than before, close enough to reach the edge of the campsite. I didn't wait. I grabbed my backpack, left everything else behind, and ran straight into the darkness. I never looked back. I ran until my lungs felt like they were going to give out. I didn't care where the trail went. I just needed to get away from that campsite. Branches hit my face. Rocks rolled beneath my boots. And somewhere behind me, I could hear footsteps. Not running, walking, slowly following me through the trees. I reached for my GPS. The screen finally came back. 1 bar of signal. I almost laughed from relief. Then I looked at the map. My route was clearly marked. The trailhead was less than 3 miles away. But there was something else on the screen. A campsite marker. Right where I'd been. I zoomed in. The name appeared. Cedar Ridge Camp. Then the marker disappeared. I kept moving. 10 minutes later, I saw something through the trees, a wooden trail marker, then another, then another. The official trail. I knew I was close. But just before reaching it, I heard 3 clicks behind me, the sound of flashlights being switched off. I didn't turn around. I stepped onto the marked trail and kept walking. I reached the trailhead just before sunrise. The parking lot was empty. I threw my backpack into my truck, then noticed something. There was mud on the driver's door, fresh mud, and 3 sets of footprints beside the truck. They stopped directly at my driver's side window, but there were no footprints leading toward them. Just 3 sets of footprints, and then nothing. I drove straight back to the ranger station. The same volunteer was there. I showed him the GPS coordinates, then the photograph. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he took out an old folder. Inside was a map. The campsite was marked, but not as Cedar Ridge Camp. It was marked Site 18, and underneath it was a date, 1989. He finally told me what happened. Site 18 had been an unofficial backcountry campground. 3 hikers disappeared there in 1989. No bodies were found. No gear was recovered. The Forest Service removed the campsite from every public map. The ranger looked at the photograph again. Then he asked me something that made my stomach drop. "Where did you get this?" I told him. He shook his head. "That's impossible." I asked why. He pointed at the photograph. The date printed on the back was 1989. I left Idaho that morning. I deleted the GPS recording. I threw away the Polaroid. And I told myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe someone had been living out there. Maybe someone was messing with me. Maybe exhaustion had affected my memory. For months, I believed that, until I developed the last photograph from my camera. It showed my campsite, the empty fire ring, my tent, and beside it, 3 people standing in the trees, wearing clothes from 1989, and one of them was holding the backpack with my name on it.